Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. All right, this is our Monday show on the morning before the New York Giants face the Pittsburgh Steelers in what Giants fans know will be just another beautiful primetime appearance for the Giants. And you guys have time to kill for the rest of the day. I know you don't want to work, you don't want to go rake the yard, you don't want to do any of that nonsense. So we'll try to fill a little bit of your time today, and here to help me do that, talk about all things Giants, is good friend Patricia Traina. Patty, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so looking forward to another primetime game. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you and me both. And you still haven't fixed that sign behind you.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm
We'll
working
we'll
on it.
we'll 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 leave it at that. I'll give you credit for that.
All right,
All right.
good.
All right, Patty. I don't want to spend all of this show talking about or trying to preview the Monday night matchup. I want to kind of talk about the Giants in sort of a larger perspective. And I think the place to start has to be with John Mara's vote of confidence in Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. Um, and the way that I have portrayed that is vote of confidence doesn't mean guarantee of anything, because we've been down this road with John before. Just your thoughts on maybe what Mara said, and maybe what he didn't say last week when he spoke to reporters about this.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, what was he gonna say? I mean, he could have said nothing, I suppose. He didn't say anything about Daniel Jones, but, you know, I really believe that John and let's not forget, Steve Tisch. We talk about the Giants ownership, we always, talk about John and not necessarily, the Tisch family. I don't think they want to make a change. I think they understand that, you have to be patient, that you have to let these things play out. You have to build up a foundation. This is year 3 of the Shane and Dable era. Have there been mistakes made? Yes, but there's also a nice foundation that's being built. You can look at Dexter Lawrence. You can look at Bobby Okereke. You can look at Andrew Thomas when healthy. You can look at Malik Neighbors. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that you can look at that are part of this foundation. And the danger you run into when you bring a new head coach and GM in is they're always going to want their guys. So basically, you're going to tear down the foundation you started to build, and you're going to go back to square one or close to square one. And that really doesn't help because it puts you in this vicious cycle that, eventually you need to break out of. So that being said, unless Shane or Dable do something really out of character, whether it be, something controversial, if Dable loses that locker room, I think, what John said, you can take it face value. And I think the two of them will come back next year, hopefully with an opportunity to bring in the quarterback that they feel is going to get them to the next level because unfortunately, they've given Daniel Jones a lot of opportunity. They've done what they can to support him, and that's just not working out for them.
Right. And we actually talked about this on your show over on Locked On Giants. And folks, if you get a chance, check out Patty's Monday show over there as well, because we did talk about a lot of these topics on her show as well. Um, and on the subject of Dayball and Shane, as much as John Mara hates to lose, I don't necessarily think that it's losing football games that got Ben McAdoo or Joe Judge fired. Um, it what got the two of, because it takes time to build a program. You're not going to build everything you want to build in a 2-year period. Um, but to me, and just speak to whether you agree with this or not, it was factors beyond the one loss record that got Ben McAdoo and Joe Judge sent packing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Ben McAdoo's case, he said he wanted to see what he had at quarterback, which, everybody thought was gonna be Davis Webb at the time, and what did he do? He went to Geno Smith, on whom they had at least, I think, 4 years of film at the time, and basically, it was McAdoo's way of benching Eli Manning because I guess he felt that maybe Eli wasn't capable of running the offense the way he wanted to in terms of the mobility. So McAdoo kind of, did himself in. And when Joe Judge in the same way, because the sad thing about Joe Judge is he had the staff around him. He surrounded himself with former head coaches at various levels, college and NFL. But when push came to shove and things were starting to fall apart, instead of really leaning into that, Joe Judge just kind of, did his own thing. It's and the lack of experience and the stubbornness and then that rant, which I think you triggered, if I'm not mistaken, you little troublemaker.
Yes, the first of Joe's 2 rants was
Yeah.
was
So
triggered by yours truly.
yeah,
So
exactly,
so
and so,
yes, so I
that
I will take some credit for that. So
all
yeah,
right, Jake, it's Ed Valentine is the one who got Joe Judge fired, so, but yeah,
partially,
that
maybe I opened the door, partially,
you know,
so
y
there.
y yeah, you cracked open the door, but yeah, that's that you can't have that, and after a while, it just became clear as day that Joe Judge just didn't know how to dig himself out of the hole, and, with Brian Dable, yeah, he comes from the Belichick tree, which I know hasn't been very successful, but Dable has also been with other systems, unlike McAdoo, who was primarily with, Mike McCarthy, or, Joe Judge, who was with the combination of Saban and Belichick, who came from that same tree. So, there is reason to be optimistic with Dable, but he's also gotta there are things he's done that leave you scratching your head about, does he know what he's doing? I mean, he probably thinks he does, but you look at it from the outside you're like, "What is he doing?"
Well, one of the other things, Patty, when we talk about, coaches who have Giants coaches who have gotten themselves shown the door fairly quickly, and you think about the Ben McAdoo era and the Eli Manning stuff, John Mara not knowing how that was going to go down, all of that was the final straw. But there was something else that happened in McAdoo's second year. McAdoo lost the locker room. He
Mhm.
had players going privately to the media to air their complaints about the coaching staff. He had players calling other players cancers. He had players not bothering to come back after the bye week and not communicate with the team that they were going to be gone for a couple of days, just sort of extending their vacations for a couple days. He had players walking out of practices.
Mhm.
So, I mean, McAdoo lost the football team. He had no control over the football team. And for me, that's the one thing that Brian Daboll has to avoid over the next 10 weeks. He has to avoid this football team turning on each other, this football team turning on him or tuning him out. And because that's the thing that's going to get him fired ultimately more than the one loss record.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and just your thoughts on that, because as we talked about on your show, Patty, and I will let you get into the various tentacles of this, there are some troubling warning signs about Dable's control over this team.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, look, you can't have guys subtly, intentionally, or unintentionally throwing each other under the bus. The optics are so great, and you can start with Deontay Banks, whom we talked about on my show. Deontay Banks, look, the first time he gave the lack of effort, you have a talk with him. The second time, you maybe step it up a little bit, and I guess the second time they decided to have the team talk to him. But, if you wanna send a message, you got to be more, I think, decisive about that. You can't be okay. Well, we'll talk to you. It's kind of like if you have a child and you tell the child, don't put your hand on this, don't put your hand in the cookie jar and eat cookies before dinner. And the kid's like, okay, no, and I won't. And then they go back and they do it again, and then they do it again, and they do it again. At what point do the words fall on deaf ears? And, Dexter Lawrence this week, he spoke about the Deontay Banks situation. He said that it was handled, it was taken care of. Deontay Banks told us in the media sessions it won't happen again. Let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope that it does not. But look, in the thick of things, and Banks even said it when he described his lack of effort against the Jalen Hurts run. He was like, "Well, I think I could have made the tackle, but after a while, I was like, nah." Well, when you start doing that, when you start saying, "Nah, I think I could do it, but I don't think so," now you're making business decisions. Now you're being selfish. When you see Brian Burns out there basically dragging one leg behind him because the guy is so banged up. I mean, I don't think people realize how badly banged up this guy is. When you see Dexter Lawrence getting triple teamed and just having to fight through what he fights through, and other guys who are fighting, how do you not get angry with that? If you're the players, and I don't know the nature of the conversations they had in the locker room, but that's something for sure that you just can't have happen, because if you don't address it, then what are you doing? And oh, by the way, I don't want to hear, oh, it's been addressed in house.
There have to
Big
be
deal.
consequences, Patty,
There
and
has to be consequences. I understand that the Giants have 3 cornerbacks that are injured, but if it were my call, I would have said to Banks, "You're sitting your butt down for a quarter." And, because a quarter, what is that gonna really make that big of a difference in the grand scheme of things? Just to send a message. Look, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, Jim Fossil, I think it was, cut Bashir Livingston, who was their best special teams player, to send a message to the team. They got the message, if I'm not mistaken, So what I mean, you can't let the players run the locker room. It's got to be the other way around. And I just wish that Dable was a little bit more forthcoming. I'm not saying throw guys under the bus, but say, hey, look, we've made this decision to sit this guy,
if
or just be a
if there's
little
a
bit more accountable for the fans' sake, if nothing else.
if there's a standard, enforce the standard. I
Hmm.
think that's what you're saying, and
Exactly.
because if there's no consequences, then players are going to wonder what the standard is.
Right. Exactly. And that's going to damage the culture you're trying to build.
And Patty, let me ask you, I know that I said on your show that that his comments bothered me, but did did any of the I was open stuff that Malik Neighbors said, after the Eagles game, and even sort of the the short way that he treated reporters the other day, and basically telling a reporter, if you want to know about it, go look it up, whatever. Just being really, sort of, I almost want to say snotty in that instance. But does does any of that bother you as well?
A little bit. A little bit. Look, people, I think sometimes these players and coaches think that, everybody is at their every time that they speak, that the same people are there all the time. I don't think they understand that we get inundated with a lot of information, and sometimes we miss stuff. And, I don't think it would have taken Malik Neighbors that much extra breath to reiterate or explain, but he chose not to. He's
Hmm.
showing now that he's becoming defensive. And, part of that's could be the environment. I get that. But the bottom line is that there is a level of respect, and I know some people were like, well, why should the players respect the media? We've got jobs to do, people. I think the majority of us are not looking to stir things up. We're looking to get you guys the information you want. And when a player just, gets snippy like that, it's like, come on. What are we doing here? As for, his comments about I was open, I took that as a direct shot of at the quarterback for not finding him for being open. And I think back to before the draft, and I don't remember the exact words he said, so I don't want to misquote the kid. But if I recall correctly, he made a comment, something about the Giants quarterback situation at the time. I don't remember what the exact words were, but everybody was like, "Oh, neighbors, is hoping for a different quarterback if he comes to the Giants or something like that." I think you know what I'm talking about.
He said something to the effect of, if if the Giants get me, they know they're gonna have to get a quarterback for a
Right,
receiver of my caliber.
right, right.
Something along
So
those lines.
right. So
Yeah.
you kind of saw that, and at the time, those comments kind of raised a little bit of a red flag for me. But you know, don't add fuel to the fire. If you feel that way, I get it. It's frustrating. We all feel frustrated, but when you add fuel to the fire by saying those things, then what do you expect? Of course, the media is going to ask you about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can say, "I was open, but I understand that the quarterback was under duress the entire game." It's something like that, to take the quarterback off the hook a little bit. But I do think it's open to interpretation, but you know, the world that we live in, if it's open to a certain interpretation, there are people that will take it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have a problem with it? A little bit, but, that's something they have to keep an eye on because that's the last thing you want is to splinter that locker room to where it's like, "Oh my gosh, Malik Neighbors doesn't like Daniel Jones as a quarterback."
Mhm. Right. And you don't want people taking quarterback sides.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
right. So, Patty, let's talk about quarterback a little bit. Um, we know that we're pretty much marking time at this point with Daniel Jones as the Giants quarterback. We know that unless something miraculous happens in the next 10 weeks and Daniel Jones plays, over a 10-week stretch like he's never played before, and the Giants somehow go 7-3 or 8-2 or something and magically make a run to the playoffs, we know that the Giants will be in the market for a quarterback in the draft. They may be in the market for at least a placeholder quarterback in free agency that won't be Jones, because it just doesn't make sense to pay him that much money next year to come back and be a placeholder. But the real question that everybody wants to know at this point is, with 10 games left, with that injury guarantee looming out there that I know you wrote about Giants Giants the other day. What I can't I never I
New
always
York Giants
Giants
on
on
SI. That's why you
SI.
want me to change the sign, don't you?
Exactly. So that I can get it right, Patty. It's for my benefit, no one else's.
Okay.
But I know that you wrote about it the other day, but the question becomes, when will the Giants pull the plug? And we know they benched him for a few minutes the other day, and what difference did that make? It was 8 minutes in a blowout when the only thing that was gonna happen was the guy was gonna get pounded into the turf a few more times. So, but in your mind, when does it make sense? When do you think it'll happen?
Well, first, before I answer that, I can't help but wonder if they pulled him from that game because he was getting beat up and because that injury guarantee staring them in the face. I wonder if that wasn't a mercy pulling more than anything. So I just wanted to mention that. But to your question, Ed, I think Dable will probably want to stick with him. Excuse me. He'll probably stick with him, I would say, at least through the bye. I mean, he's starting the Monday night. I can't imagine he wouldn't start against the Commanders or the Panthers. I think at that point, you see where you're at. If they drop these next 3 games, and it's possible they drop 2 out of the next 3, then I think you gotta think about it. Because, look, the other thing I think Dable was trying to balance is, all right, I've just said Daniel gives us the best chance to win. So if I pull him, now what kind of message am I sending to the locker room? That's
Back.
the other thing you gotta be careful of. So it's a really sticky situation, and I think that, I could see a scenario where they'd say, "You know what? We're gonna stick with Daniel as long as we're in the playoff hunt." And yes, folks, they are still in the playoff race despite what the record says. They haven't been mathematically eliminated. But I think, Ed, they're playing with fire in doing so because Daniel Jones, especially when he takes off as a runner, he doesn't run like a quarterback. He runs like a halfback. All right. You have another performance by the offensive line like you had last week. And again,
Mhm.
Pittsburgh's got a darn good defense. Tell me you're not holding your breath every time Daniel gets hit and you're like, get up, because you don't want that, A, you don't want him hurt, and B, you don't want him to, that injury guarantee to come into factor. So they're playing with fire on that because as I explained in the caps piece that I did, if they have to pay that 23 million, in addition to they also have 12 million guaranteed if Daniel's on the roster by March, I think it's March 12th.
Something like that.
That's gonna
It
yeah,
right.
that's gonna take that's gonna put them in the red salary cap wise, and they're gonna not be able to do much without restructuring a whole bunch of contracts, which you don't wanna do because if you remember, that's what Dave Gettleman did his final year, restructured a whole bunch of contracts, put them in cap hell, and it took him about 2.5 years to get out of it.
Right. But you're absolutely right, Patty. It is a sticky situation, and I'm glad that you mentioned the locker room because it's very easy for fans to just say, "Oh, bench him now and bench him now because of the injury guarantee." But if you have said, as Brian Dable has said multiple times, Daniel Jones gives us the best chance to win. You are telling your locker room, which most of the players probably believe this anyway, even though Daniel is struggling in certain ways and limited in certain ways, that whether fans want to hear it or not, go put their careers side by side. Daniel Jones and Drew Lock were drafted in the same year. Go put their career numbers side by side. Daniel Jones has been better than Drew Lock. It's not even close. Daniel Jones has been better than Drew Lock. There's a reason why Drew Lock is already on his third team.
Mm.
And so clearly the players understand that although it hasn't been good, the players understand that the best quarterback they have may not be good enough, but the best quarterback they have is the one who's playing. And when you're trying to keep your job and you're trying to keep a locker room, as we talked about with Tay Banks, how do you look Brian Burns in the eye and tell Brian Burns that he's got to go put his body on the line? And Dexter Lawrence that he's got to put his body on the line, and Jermaine Illuminor that he's got to put his body on the line. And the rest of these guys, Tyler Nubin, who's played every snap so far this year. You guys have to put your body on the line, but we're not putting the best quarterback on the field. So we're not giving you the best chance to win. So
Mhm.
how do you justify those two things and keep the players and not end up costing yourself your job? So it's a very tricky situation for Brian Dable.
Yeah, you don't. I don't see any way to do it. I mean, it's really a tough situation because if you pull him, you're basically saying, "We
The
give up.
season's
We're
over.
tanking the rest of the season." I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you get 1 or 2 wins out of Drew Lock here and there, but, don't you basically have sealed your deal by saying, "Daniel gives us the best chance to win."
Right. And when you pull him, you're telling your locker room that the results of the rest of these games don't matter that much.
Yep. Yep.
And
Exactly.
so what are you putting your body on the line for?
Exactly.
Mhm. So so your thoughts just before we sign off, Patty. Um, your thoughts about Monday night's game. Almost everybody's picking the Steelers to win. Just your thoughts uh, on on how Monday might go.
Wow. I think the Giants defense can play well enough to keep it from not getting out of hand. I wish I could say the same thing about the offense. And by the way, I'm going to make a prediction right now. I'm going to be because game 3 of the World Series is going to be on. I wouldn't be shocked if that Giants Pittsburgh game is one of the lowest watched games this season on Monday night, especially in the New York area. I think everybody and their uncle will probably be tuned into the Yankees, would be my guess at any rate. But that being said, yeah, that I just think that, the Steelers, they've been so good at home. I think the last time they lost at home on Monday night was back in 1991 to the Giants, by the way. 1991 is the last time, if I want to say. So they've been really good at home. I think they're like 10-0 or something like that under Mike Tomlin at home on Monday night. Um, so yeah, it's a tough game, and you just hope that it's competitive at least, it's not a blowout to where, okay, it's done by halftime, let's go to bed or change the channel. You hope that, it's not going to be too physical to the point where guys are going to come out of there. You're going to have more injuries than you already have. I mean, it does have the potential to be ugly, but look, this is why you line up and you play the game because you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. All right, Patty. We will find out what happens on Monday night, and maybe the Giants, maybe even the Yankees will have a little bit of luck on Monday night. You never know. You never know. We can
You
cross our
Yankee
fingers
fans,
and
I
hope.
hope so. I'm a
We,
Mets fan, but I'm for you Yankee fans, I hope so.
yes, it would be nice to at least win a game. But
Sure.
but anyway, Patty, thank you as always. Giants fans, thank you as always for tuning in. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.